In Rome, the Pope prayed for peace in the face of renewed threats of war and the continued fighting over border disputes. The Environmental Protection Agency has cautioned against growing hazards to humans as air and water pollution reach new levels. Survivors of the air crash tell of their harrowing experiences as Flight 107 crashed and burned late last night. These and more stories coming up, and I'll be back with a special report in just a moment on the combined federal campaign. Hello, I'm Frank Reynolds, and I'm about to bring you a special report. Most news reports deal with the great calamities of our times: war, natural disasters, the energy crisis, inflation. They are all news because they are happening now, and they affect all of us. That's what makes news: urgency, timeliness, events that touch our lives and the lives of millions. As anchormen or television news journalists, we don't make the news, we report it, we dig for it, or we witness it. A good reporter is a good observer, not just seeing and telling the facts, but feeling the vital aspects of the story and how it affects the lives of people who are part of it, and relating it to the lives of our viewers. So I'm going to bring you a special news story. It is happening right now, and it is important because the events will affect in very direct ways the lives of millions of people, and you might be one of them. It's a story that will take us to far-flung parts of the world, but at the same time, it's a story that's unfolding in every city and town in this country. It affects families and children, as well as the aged and the poor. It might surprise you that it's not a story about politics or war, and yet it may be the most important news story you will see this year. It's a story about people, and one of the people's lives it touched was Marvin Tucker, Army Specialist, 4th Class. He was returning to Germany after being married in Granite City, Illinois. Tucker was aboard a 747, 3 hours out of New York, when suddenly he had a heart attack and fell to the floor.
Are you a doctor? If there's a doctor on board, please contact your cabin attendant.
The stewardesses announced over the PA system that if there was any doctor aboard with the doctor, please come to the back of the airplane. And in a big 747, I thought, well, sure, there'll be a doctor here. And then more people, I kept turning around looking, and more people kept coming back and coming back. But there didn't seem to be anybody that seemed to be answering the call for a doctor. And so then the stewardess announced and wanted to know if there were any nurses aboard, and again, no response. And so when she went by the last time to go back to the back after making an announcement, she'd gotten down to any corpsmen, any medics, really searching. And I told her that I had my training.
The young woman's name is Susan Frankhart, and the training she spoke about is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, called CPR. It's an emergency measure developed by the American Red Cross and the American Heart Association to save lives in cases of cardiac arrest. Classes in CPR are taught in every community.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Gander, this is Clipper 72. Gander, Clipper 72 has an ill passenger on board. We suspect a heart attack. We want to amend our flight plan and need new vectors for landing at Gander.
Marvin Tucker was breathing when they landed at Gander, Newfoundland. His life had been saved by Susan Frankhart and CPR. But let's take a closer look at the story. When you think of the American Red Cross, you're apt to think of disaster relief, and they do a good job of it. But they do other important jobs. Just one of them is the training of people like Susan Frankhart, which made possible this real-life example and saved the life of this serviceman. That wasn't all the American Red Cross did. They contacted his family, calmed their fears, got hold of his medical history, and got it to the doctors at Gander Hospital. Then, at the family's request, they later located Susan Frankhart to thank her. Marvin Tucker's story could be the story of any one of us, stricken unexpectedly, unable to ask for help, but hoping it will be there when we need it. Now let's travel around the world for another part of our story. In the developing countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, millions of destitute families subsist on incomes of less than $100 a year. An estimated 400 million children suffer from hunger and malnutrition. Only 7% go to school. Life expectancy is 35 years. The needs are enormous and basic. Nutritious food, water that's drinkable, shelter, medical care, and schooling. The plight of these millions of families is a matter of life and death every day. And no matter how hard they try, they lack the education, skills, and means of improving their lives. They need a helping hand, desperately. ISA agencies do just that. They feed millions of needy people, mostly children, to combat malnutrition. And they provide the tools, materials, and know-how to enable families to grow more food. They help build water systems for irrigation and to bring drinkable water to the village. Schools are built by local volunteers with materials provided by ISA agencies. The ISA also sends doctors and nurses overseas to treat and teach, training local doctors and nurses in modern techniques. In all these ways and many more, ISA agencies are not only helping the families to survive, but also making it possible for them to work their way out of the centuries-old cycle of poverty and despair to a brighter and self-supporting tomorrow. Here at home, in our own nation, millions of lives are saved each year because equally important are cure, prevention, and treatment of disease. The national health agencies directly meet the challenge of research, meeting patient needs and providing professional treatment. Continuing medical research, funded and often directed by these health agencies, brings us closer to a disease-free society. As the relentless search for cure and prevention progresses, new discoveries lead to improved care and rehabilitation. Countless programs of assistance are provided to parents, children, and health professionals in our communities. The national health agencies are deeply committed to everyone's well-being, yours and mine.
Doing fine. He's making real progress.
Thank you, Doctor.
Counseling and vocational rehabilitation by the national health agencies have allowed many people to lead productive, useful lives. The national health agencies provide vocational guidance, professional training, and necessary equipment for those with health disabilities or handicaps. It is important that all of us feel wanted and serve useful purposes. Providing community service and patient care, the national health agencies provide very real hope to all of us. As distant as the segments of this report may appear, and as diverse as the problems that people are facing, there is a common bond, one that becomes more evident when we look more closely at our own communities and our own families and realize that our problems today in a complex society can go beyond the need for good health and nourishment. Problems of the mind and spirit, problems that exist in both affluent suburbs and urban ghettos. Problems for which ultimately hope can only be found in our compassion for each other. When Mrs. Frank brought her mother to this home for the aged, it was a decision made in desperation. There was no one to care for her when she was at work, and her mother could no longer take care of herself. Her husband had died, leaving her alone with nowhere to go, no one to talk to. In order to work and care for her, Mrs. Frank searched for a place where she could be safe and where someone would care, really care. When she brought her to this home for the aged, it was with fear and skepticism and a hurt which reached deep into her heart. That was some time ago.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Eddie. Happy birthday.
Today, Mrs. Frank enjoys her visits to see her mother and her newfound friends. Nothing can replace home, but now the fear and pain have been eased, and laughter and love again have a place in her mother's life. This center is just one of the agencies supported by United Way that are found in communities all across the nation. Agencies that help people cope with the problems of drugs and alcoholism, that tackle the tough problems caused by divorce and child abuse and mental illness. Programs that provide hearing aids and hot meals and jobs. The work of the United Way in communities is known to all of us, but sometimes we forget just how far and widely United Way reaches. There's one last story. When Jerry Rawlings was 4 years old, doctors discovered she had a rare form of cancer in her eyes. Her only hope lay in surgery that would save her life, but leave her blind. Imagine her mother and the inevitable decision she had to make to save her daughter, but to lose her daughter's sight.
Up, 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 faster and faster and faster.
Today,
and faster
Jerry is 8 years old, a happy and healthy child who loves music and reading. Through the help of a dedicated volunteer, Jerry was sent to a special school, a school where a United Way agency supplies Braille books and maps, opening a whole new world for children like Jerry. Those kinds of stories happen every day in the many good agencies, services, and programs supported by United Way. Stories about the very old, like Mrs. Frank's mother, stories about the very young, even younger than Jerry, and stories about everyone in between. So many worthwhile causes wrapped in one, the United Way. Through a child who cannot see, perhaps we can see that there is much we can do to help. When I started this report, I said it was a special news report because it was happening now and it was affecting the lives of millions of Americans. Unlike most of the other reports that are brought to you about the tragedies in life, the disasters and catastrophes that can befall any of us and all of us, this story has a unique ending. For unlike most of the news that you hear, where your chance to affect or reverse its outcome is non-existent or distant, in each instance, the stories you have seen in this report have a positive and happy ending because of you. Now I want to extend to each of you the opportunity to continue to be part of these success stories and to write the endings to thousands that will unfold throughout the year. Through agencies and programs such as the American Red Cross, the International Service Agencies, National Health Agencies, and United Way, you've seen that people can make a difference. Through your support of the combined federal campaign, you are making the work of all these agencies and programs possible. But only with your help will these stories continue. As a federal employee, you personally have an opportunity to make a difference through this one federally authorized combined federal campaign. And you are assured that 98 cents of every dollar you give goes to the agencies to help people. By your tax-deductible contribution through payroll deduction, you can give more to help more people in an effective and efficient way. That's the end of this special report. Let's not kid ourselves. Much of the news this year will be bad. Stories about catastrophes and disasters, burning buildings and rising crime. But through your support of the combined federal campaign, every time you see a bad story, you can remind yourself that there are good stories, better stories, taking place every day because of you. I'm asking you to be part of the combined federal campaign to make your payroll deduction pledge now, and to join with all the other very special people that have brought you this very special report. For the combined federal campaign, this is Frank Reynolds. Thank you. This film was jointly sponsored and approved by the American Red Cross, the International Service Agencies, the National Health Agencies, and your local United Way, who want to thank you